and good evening. Welcome to our second dev stream for Last Kingdom. So glad you could all join us tonight. I'll start off a little bit differently than the last stream. I just want to give a little bit of feedback, or a little bit of info on what the stream's all about. So Last Kingdom is a persistent medieval strategy game under development by a very small team of developers. And these streams are just a little insight into the development process. We go through different things with CryEngine, with game development in general. And we have these streams as an opportunity for you guys to jump in, see what we're doing, hang out, ask some questions, maybe get a little insight into what's going on. If you guys want to get more involved, want to learn more about Last Kingdom, please hop over to our Discord. There is a link in the chat. There's also a form on our website, lastkingdomgame.com, at which you can enter your email address. And when we start doing email updates, you guys will start getting those updates. I'd also like to quickly thank our two patrons who are currently supporting development. Moose King, shout out to you, and then XX Anara. XX, thank you for your support as well. So with that, let's do a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing tonight. So last stream we imported a Trebuchet into CryEngine with a little bit of... We had some problems. It was a little bit of a bumpy road. But tonight we're going to be importing a Boulder, a simple Boulder. I'm going to walk through doing some Decimate to that Boulder within Blender, just to kind of show you guys how that's done. We're going to add a physics proxy to it, export that, import that into CryEngine. We're then going to go into the Trebuchet, add some animation events to attach that Boulder to the Trebuchet while it's in its firing animation. And then we're actually going to fire that Boulder at a target if everything goes well. And yeah, that's what we'll be doing tonight. If you guys want to give me a little bit of feedback in chat or on Discord, how everything's set up tonight, a little bit of a different setup. The screen resolution's been corrected to be a 2560 by 1080. There were a couple comments on that last time. And then also we have a different microphone setup tonight. Hopefully it's a little bit better than last time as well. So let me know how that goes. And let's jump right in to your favorite modeling tool, Blender. All right, so this beautiful gray blob here is a boulder. It is a boulder with 192 triangles. Pretty simple mesh. Nothing too complex about it. All of our faces are smooth because it is a boulder. There's no jagged edges. So the first thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to decimate this. And what do I mean by that? So in CryEngine we have levels of detail for meshes. We have levels of detail for characters. And what it essentially means is the farther the player gets away from an object, the more reduced in complexity your geometry has to be, because you're not going to see as much detail as if you were close up. So we talked about this last stream, but to decimate, I'm essentially going to duplicate my boulder and add a modifier to it. I want to give a shout out to Jay for showing me this neat trick. I use it all the time for everything. And this decimate modifier here, essentially it's just a ratio. So the more you go down, the more it decimates the mesh and the less detailed it becomes. So we're going to want our finalized LOD. I don't think we're going to get all the way to 5 LODs tonight, but we're going to have our finalized LOD be something around 20 triangles. So let's go with 0.7 ratio to start. You can see the face count down here is 130.34. I'm going to go ahead and apply that LOD ratio. I did name the mesh here LOD1_Boulder. That's the naming convention you have. So we have our parent here, the Boulder. LOD1 needs to be a child, so shift drag underneath the Boulder to set up that LOD1. So I'm going to take this LOD1, I'm going to shift D, duplicate it again. This will be our LOD2. I'm going to add the Decimate modifier again and bring it down some more. Not quite that much because we're only on LOD2. Apply that modifier again, doing the exact same thing. And we'll get that Decimate modifier going as well. So this is LOD3, so this is getting pretty far out. So we're gonna get a little more aggressive with our decimates. This is essentially gonna reduce the ratio by half. And then there's just going to be one more level of detail that we're going to have, and this is going to reduce it down to the poly count we're looking for. That looks rough, but in Engine, you honestly won't notice a thing. So we have our base mesh, the Boulder. We have our level of details, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We do have a material already assigned to this Boulder and skinned. But before we do that, there's one other thing that we want to add to this Boulder before we export it to CryEngine, and that is going to be a proxy mesh. So I'm going to Shift A to add a mesh. I'm going to add a UV sphere. I'm going to drastically reduce the counts because physics meshes in CryEngine, you want them to be as simple as they can be while providing a rough approximation of the object. The less complex your polygons are in CryEngine with the physics engine, the more it will be able to compute. That makes the same logic applies to rendering. The less polygons you have in a scene, the faster it's going to be able to compute. Same with the physics system. So we have here a pretty simple UV sphere. I'm going to manipulate it manually just a little bit to better fit the rock, or the boulder, I should say. And that's looking pretty good. Just add a couple more modifications here to get a better approximation for the shape of the object. As this boulder hits an engine, it'll kind of bounce around. So I'm just trying to get rid of some of those really hard edges, which might cause some awkward bouncing behavior. So I think this looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and UV unwrap this. Just so that it has a clean unwrap. And then let's get this set up right to play with our mesh nicely. So we're going to call it Proxy. And our mesh is called Proxy, and we're going to add a material to this, and we're going to also name that material Proxy, just so everything's very clear and easy to locate. That is also going to be parented to our boulder. So we have just for an overview, we have our Boulder, we have our LOD 1, 2, 3, 4 with reduced poly counts, and then we have our physics proxy here. So that's everything we need. I'm going to go ahead and save this and then export it. My CryEngine preset, which basically just says Y forward and FBX unit scale applied. We don't need to worry about anything else because this is not a skeleton. This is not a character. So let's export that, and then let's hop over to the engine. So tools, FBX Import, mesh. And I'm going to locate that FBX file. And here we go. Here's our FBX. File imported through the FBX import tool. Works very well. So over here on the left, we have all of our nodes, which are meshes. So we have our proxy here. I'm going to change the type here to physics proxy. All the level of details already get automatically labeled based on the naming convention used. So LOD 4, LOD 4, LOD 1, LOD 1, that's all matched up very well. So I'm going to go to my Boulder then. There's a couple things we have to modify here as well. So the physicalization of the proxy here needs to be proxy only, no draw. And then we're going to generate our material. I'm going to create a new folder here for the Boulder and save this as a Boulder material. And that's called the game crash. Let's try that one more time. So CryEngine crashed there. I'm not sure if that's because I had the engine open or something else is going on, but we will try that again. So I'm not going to open the level this time to save our time. I already had that open, so we'll go back here, grab our Boulder FBX again, physics proxy, give it a mass of 20, 20. Back to our material, it's a proxy only draw, so objects, weapons, boulder.mtl. Okay, so our Boulder file is there. This may be my fault. We are running on a custom engine version, and so yeah, this may just be my fault. So what we're gonna do, because it did generate the material file, we're gonna work around this for now. So ignoring the crash, let's launch up the engine again. 100%, that's my fault. This usually doesn't crash. All right, so let's grab the FBX again. Set our properties again. Instead of generating the material, I'm going to open it, and I'm going to open it from objects, weapons, boulders, boulder material. There's our material file. And then I'm going to save this mesh, objects, weapons, boulder. That's CGF. Okay. So that's imported now. I'm going to try to modify the material really quick. This may also cause a crash, but it's very shiny right now, and I think we're missing one texture map, our specular map. So I'm going to rename this one to UV for my peace of mind. This is just that useless material or some material that doesn't really do anything. So the proxy is going to be no draw as well. And then the Boulder. We have some textures to import. So weapons, Boulder. We're going to get rid of these two textures. And we're going to bring in these three Boulder textures. So pretty simple naming convention for CryEngine. Your diffuse Boulder diff, your normal Boulder DDN, and then specular Boulder spec. Just drag those into the engine, and that compiled our textures for us. I can then drag these textures over to the material, and I'm going to take the smooth this down a bunch so that we don't have a shiny rock. And that is everything we need for the material. So let's load up the sandbox again. And the sandbox here is just it's like a test level. There's a bunch of stuff here. There's a couple clumps of trees. There's a river with some fish in it. We have some deer in the woods. Some rocks and a big pit over there. But really, it's just meant to be a test bed where we can quickly throw stuff down and see how it works. So I'm gonna drag in the Boulder and just see how it kind of looks. So I think that's looking pretty good. All right, so now the fun part begins. We have this Boulder, and we need to fire this Boulder. So what we're gonna do is we have a pre-existing system set up in Last Kingdom for firing projectiles. Hey, Legendary, how's it going? But with that, we're going to hook into that existing system, and we're going to fire a Boulder through there. So let's open the character tool and get started. I'm doing pretty great. How are you? That is me, yes. If you haven't heard my voice before, I hope I didn't scare you. All right, so we're opening our character tool right now, and we're going to take a look at the Siege Engine. Trebuchet, this beautiful piece of art that we imported last episode. I think we spent. So I was going back. I was adding timestamps to that video last week, and I think we spent a solid 40 minutes just trying to figure out how to scale our armature properly. So that was fun. I would say, but. We're gonna have even more fun today. So this is our Trebuchet. This is the fire animation. And what we want to do is we want to basically, because this is a strategy game, when the arm gets here, we want to equip that Boulder, and then when it gets to like when it gets to, okay, maybe not here, but a little bit further back. So like maybe here, we're gonna fire it, and we're gonna fire it at a specific point. For tonight, I think we're just gonna pick an arbitrary point, maybe 20 meters out from the Trebuchet. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna add an animation event. We're gonna make a custom animation event. And what custom animation events in CryEngine, what I found them to be very useful for is specifically triggering game logic from an animation. So we're going to set the name for our animation event to be load. We're going to set the mesh for the animation event to be the boulder we just imported, which is at assets, objects, weapons, boulder.cgf. And the joint is where we're actually going to attach. So when we say load, we're going to attach it to a joint. So to see that, I'm going to take a look at the skeleton. And I'm going to probably attach it to this Bone 09. So just choose the joint here, set it there. And to test this, I'm going to add, you can see the little red square there, representing where that joint is on the mesh. So to test this, I'm going to add a new skin to my character. So we have our Trebuchet here. Okay, so that's another issue. We'll work around that in a second. I think I just need to re-import that animation. But to test the positioning of this boulder that we're going to attach to this Trebuchet, I'm just going to create a quick joint attachment at that TR Bone 09. And I'm going to set the geometry to be that boulder. Doesn't like that. I'm going to change the geometry to see if it's an issue with the geometry or with the skeleton. Okay, so still the same issue. Let's pop it up 1 to the 08 bone. That's so bizarre. Alright, so that's unexpected. Hey Denalty. Just a couple. There's approximately, I think my frame rate's about 80, so there's approximately 80 per second. If you can see in the top right corner, the current number of warnings is about to explode. So I'm gonna very quickly re-import the Trebuchet. And the animation as well, and see if that resolves the issue. Actually, no. Okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna have to re-import the animation. I don't have to re-import the Trebuchet. I just set it to bind pose I guess when the animation's running, it didn't like that. So, so we'll set it back to the Bone 9. Go back and equip the Boulder. Wow, that's big. That's a big boulder. So we can transform. Is there a scale? Scale with attachments? I don't see it. That's okay. So what we're gonna end up having to do to get this kind of finalized and set up. So the Trebuchet, just like disclaimer, last episode when we imported the Trebuchet, it was a little bit too big. It still is too big. And the the Boulder is definitely still too big. So I think we need a bigger Trebuchet, honestly, if we're gonna import this Boulder properly. But so okay, all joking aside, what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to re-import a fresh fire animation, save it properly. This is the one right here that's tracking right here is just the system loaded animation. So, and yeah, if we fire a giant boulder, that's fine for tonight. I mean, functionality wise, that's what we're looking for anyway. My Trebuchet is the biggest Trebuchet on the block. Yep. How are you doing, by the way? Potato peeling. And what are we making potato peels for? You've never had potato peels? Where I'm from, I'm not sure where you're from, but potato peels are like a delicacy. So you make a baked potato, and then you take the skin, and you sprinkle it with salt and bacon, and then you eat the potato skins. It's a big thing. I think TGI Fridays at one point had potato skin chips that they were selling. And I love the reference, by the way, to Lord of the Rings. I'm hoping to put a couple of very subtle references to some of my favorite stuff in the game, but we'll see. All right, so what I'm doing right now is, well, what I'm trying to do right now is, I have the Trebuchet FBX here, and I have the fire animation here already. Looks like I'm gonna delete that all. If you try to re-import an animation into CryEngine and the FBX already exists, it will not be happy with you and will not allow you to do that. So we've just re-imported the Trebuchet fire animation here. So the only other thing I need to do here then is the character. The character is currently set up to target from a different folder. So when it's scanning for where to pull our animations from, it's currently pulling from characters engines. And I want to instead pull from, animations engines. And then we have our Trebuchet fire here. So that still didn't like that. I'm going to close out of the character tool. I'm going to go ahead and restart the engine really quick. See if we can't knock it out of its. Well, have fun cooking, Legendary. You will be missed. Hopefully you're not also peeling potatoes. Alright, so I'm gonna go and try to fix the engine reference. So the animation events, I need to specify some of this stuff, otherwise it's not going to allow me to save anything. So under engines, so it's going to be Trebuchet. I'm going to create a new animation events file. I'm a little bit concerned for what your plan is. But if it involves potatoes, we might be okay. Alright, so I fixed the path for the animation. I have my Trebuchet fire animation here working as intended. I'm going to have to reset up this animation event. So again, it's custom. The name of the animation, the custom animation event is LOD. The parameter is going to be the object, which is our Boulder that we imported. Which is located at assets, objects, weapons, Boulder, boulder.cgf, and the bone's going to be bone 9. Alright, so that is our first animation event, and we have one issue here. It's set to key at 0. These animation events essentially are on a scale from 0 to 1. So you see this nice track down here. You're like, oh well, that's just fine. So this is like a 2.0, right? So all I have to do is type 2 in here. No, it's a scale of 0 to 1. So what I need to do is I'll put in 0.3 here. But you can go down here and drag this to the spot where you want it to be. So I'm going to go back to where this is actually funny because I'm going to want to load it exactly at the beginning of the animation. So that's going to be a 0. So the second one, our fire one, is also going to be a custom animation event. It's going to be a fire. The parameter is going to be Boulder. And you'll see what we're going to do with that in just a second. Denalti, by the way, I would love to get some feedback on what you think about the sound. I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but there's a slightly different setup. It's a different microphone. No, well, yeah, the music, yes, but also the microphone. How do I sound? Am I? I guess just going through some of the previous recordings, the sound was quite. It wasn't choppy, but there were a lot of like. Yes, there was just a lot of not so great. Okay. Well, I will turn the music down slightly, and I will talk a little bit closer to my mic. So you let me know how that goes. Thank you for the feedback. All right, so this fire animation. So we have a Trebuchet fire in here. So we load the boulder there. We're then gonna fire it, and well, I'm very happy that this whole setup has put you in the mood for potato peeling. I guess I can feel very accomplished with that. What I'm trying to find right here is where to key in the fire event, and I think I'm going to do it right here. So we have our custom fire animation event. I'm just going to drag that over and see how that says 0.073. It's at 0.31. That's just the number of seconds that your whole animation goes. And so this will essentially, so what's going to happen here is we have two animation events. Load is going to basically say, hey, load the boulder into my trebuchet at the basket, and then 0.73 or 0.3 seconds into the animation, it's going to send an event to fire it. Yeah, and exactly. I think when I was looking at this earlier, like, because and like even somewhere around here, I mean, I think that's okay. We'll take a look at it and we can adjust it if needed in engine. But so that's our fire animation. Those are our two animation events. So let's take a look at let's open the Sandbox, and then I want to actually we're gonna jump into code a little bit here before doing that. So get rid of the other stuff we don't need. See, you're speaking Spanish. I don't exactly know what that word means, but I will sound educated and nod my head. Yes. Yes. Gotcha. That that makes sense. All right, so the first thing I have to do is we have to get this boulder to fire is we have in Last Kingdom we have a combat system, and that combat system essentially works based on animation events. So I want to walk you through how we're handling that right now, and then we're going to set up the trebuchet as a new unit, which is essentially our base class for all of our in-game combat or workers, essentially anything you can control. So we have this animation event here. It's pretty simple. We have all of our events from the built-in CryEngine events. We have our animation event registered to listen to it. So if the animation event triggers, if we don't have a target, we don't care. We're not going to fire anything. We do a reinterpret cast of the event to get our instance. We then extract the name, the joint, and the param. If you remember those three properties we set. We face our target, whatever we're trying to fire at. We then check to see if our target is an active target. If it has health, we then damage it. If it's alive and it wasn't killed, and the unit got damaged, it's gonna fight back. So we then track whatever hit it, or if it's in a flee state, it'll run away. That's something we have set up with our deer. If they get hit by any combat, any damage to them, they will scatter essentially, which is kind of neat and kind of kind of annoying if you're just trying to get some meat for your peasants. So that's the attack. That's for melee. So we're gonna take a look at the ranged, which is what we're going to set up with our Trebuchet here. So the event name load. If we go back to the engine, the character tool, our first custom parameter is load. So again, when we load, we face the target. We get our character instance from our animation component. We get the attachment manager from that character. We then get the slot by the joint, and that joint is what we specified for a custom, or for our animation event here. So TR-Bone09, that's the name of the joint. We then create a new CGF attachment, and then set the mesh to the event param, which is this assets, objects, weapons, boulders, boulder. That's CGF, and we bind it to that attachment slot. So that's the equip right there. And yet, so to answer your question, yes, the Trebuchet will have splash damage and it will have range. Range is currently determined. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a fixed number. So when we were working on the combat system a little bit earlier in the process, we were debating whether or not to have a fixed fire speed with a mass for our projectiles, and then it would only go a certain amount of distance, because if you fire a 50 kilogram boulder at 10 meters per second, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to go a finite amount of distance. What we instead did is we set up a range, which I think will be a little bit more intuitive for players. So your Trebuchet will always have the same range that it can fire at. And what we do is we essentially calculate, okay, if we want to hit a target, say 40 meters away, and we have this boulder that's 90 kilograms, this is how much force we have to apply to it. And then in terms of splash damage, it's going to essentially damage anything where it hits, but it's not quite implemented yet. So 300 meters, I would say, is a little bit relative, because it's a video game, and there has to be some type of balance. We are trying to make this as historically accurate as possible. At the same time, having a Trebuchet that can snipe any enemy unit on the map might be a little bit counterintuitive to gameplay. So hopping back into our combat component here, the second piece we have is the fire event, and we have that set up here to fire 0.3 seconds into our animation. And our custom parameter here is our name of the event, of the animation event is fire. The custom parameter is boulder, and the joint name is TR-Bone09. So let's take a look at the implementation. We get our character instance again, we get the attachment manager, and get the attachment slot of that TR-Bone09. We clear any previous binding to that. So if there was a mesh or an object or something on that bone, we get rid of it. We then spawn a new entity at the absolute world position of that bone. And then we create a new projectile at that position. Set where it's being fired from, set the target, and then actually fire it. So that's the overview of how the animation events are used from the character tool to actually trigger projectiles within the engine, at least our current implementation. So to get this actually working, we need to do two things. One, we need to set up the Trebuchet as a unit. And then two, we need to register the boulder as a valid projectile. And neither of those exist right now. The Trebuchet class exists, but it's not So I'm going to start with the Trebuchet. Here's a trebuchet. It extends the unit class. There's nothing too complex to it. So I'm going to pull up a woodcutter because I want to copy some of these properties. Some of these properties from the woodcutter over to the trebuchet. So the name's going to be a trebuchet. The icon is going to be a woodcutter icon for now. We can clean that up later. And we don't have a trebuchet type yet, so let's add a trebuchet there. And the fragment, there's not going to be a fragment right now. So the trebuchet is going to be a non-movable character. So it's going to have a little bit of a different implementation than the standard unit. But we'll still be able to set it up to work in much the same way, I think. So one thing we're going to do, we're going to have to override the initialize function. So this is overriding the initialize function from unit. And I guess just to make a comment on this, we will likely abstract some of this functionality to an engines class so that we can have many engines with the same core functionality, but then split out different pieces like, okay, the name, the icon, you know, what type of siege engine you are. So going to our Trebuchet CPP file, we'll do get that initialize override. So I'm going to do unit initialize. So we're going to call the parent initialize method on the unit. And then I want to do a couple things. So all trebuchets don't actually have to be the same. And in fact, they can look different. They can be different sizes. They can fire different ranges, technically, if you wanted to. And that's actually something that we're really excited about with Last Kingdom is we added a variable setup to almost everything. So you have a core resource like wood, for example, and you can have 50 different types of wood. It's still wood. Your woodcutters still go out, they chop down the trees, they saw the wood into boards, and then they take that back to your warehouse. But there could be 50 different types of trees, and those trees could have different properties. There could be willow trees, which give a lot of wood, and there could be palm trees, which give maybe not so much wood, but they're found in the beaches. Or if you go into the mountains, you could find pine trees that give like an insane amount of wood, like 1,000. But that dynamic is one of the really nice things we're looking to use to diversify and give you incentive to go to different areas of the map. In that, in that, if you want to farm wood, like sure, you could chop down these palm trees on the beach right here. Or you could go to the mountains and set up like a farming outpost, and you'll be able to farm much more wood because there's just way more wood in general. So all right, so you may be looking at me right now and saying, hey Tristan, what are you doing? You just removed the animation component. What's going on? Well, let me tell you why. So the animation component is for a character controller. And the character controller is used to move something around. The trebuchet will not move. The trebuchet is going to be a fixed structure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a property to my Trebuchet class. And set up an animated mesh component. And I don't want to... Not sure I should, you know, we'll just include it. So here's an animated mesh component. When we initialize this, we're going to remove the character controller animation component. Now we're going to do the we're going to add this animated mesh component to it. So we then need to set our animated mesh. We need to set the character file to be our object. And the reason why I'm setting the object there is because for our trebuchets, we set the base properties on our initialize function, which allows us to essentially specify any number of different sub classes with different properties, all inheriting from a core functionality, which I think is pretty cool. Sunlock might take issue with that, probably, but yeah. So I'm just going and finding my, so we have our characters, engines, and this is going to be the Trebuchet.cdf. So that's our base object. So that's what's going to happen when we get our get object. So default animation name. This is going to be the animation name, which is just Trebuchet_fire. And then we want the default animation to be looped. And there's no start. It looks like you play. That's so bizarre. Okay. So that's fine. So this is essentially how the Trebuchet will be set up. I'm going to not finish this Trebuchet class right here, just for the sake of being able to create the other pieces and get the Boulder actually firing tonight. And we'll come back and kind of clean this up and probably extract some functionality to an engines class and get that all working. Full disclaimer, this is our first siege engine within Last Kingdom. So yeah, there's nothing for siege engines right now. This is all very, very greenfield here. So that may work, that may not work. We'll see. We'll play around with it. We may need to set up an actual character with a fragment. But anyway, So we have our siege engine, our trebuchet. Let's go to. So we need to create something else. We need to create a projectile. So under equipment and projectiles, I have my arrow and my bolt. The first thing I want to do is go into the projectile factory. So, like you saw. Yeah, for sure. That's on the to-do list. It's I mean, essentially, the projectile is going to fire. It's going to have a little bit of rotational spin. Probably going to also do some randomization so that it doesn't always hit in the exact same spot. So slightly offset the firing angle. Because having a sniper trebuchet, like how fair is that in a game? Extremely fair, you might tell me, but. All right, so I did this if type equals Boulder, we're going to get or create a component in Boulder. And the reason why I did that is because we have a parameter here for firing a boulder. This parameter here corresponds to a projectile class within our project. And this boulder, I'm just going to go ahead and copy the header file here. So I'm going to create a new projectile class here. So boulder.h, paste that in here. I'm actually going to copy from the arrow because it has everything filled out. So here's our boulder, here's our base properties, our equipment properties, so that's all good. I'm going to generate a new good. If you do not generate new goods for all of your components, you will run into serious issues. I'll bump the damage by a bit, 100. I don't think the slot matters at this point. It might matter at this point. So I'm going to do TR Bone 09. And that's a little typo. There shouldn't be two objects there. Doesn't do what automatically? Generate a new good. So I think the reason why it doesn't generate a new good just dynamically is yeah, so I think it's because that GUID is a unique identifier. If you're working with the engine, if you've set up entity links can be tracked by a unique GUID. And there's a lot of things you can do to like say, hey, does the GUID of this component match this specific GUID? So it's like the ID, and that's exactly what it is. It's just a unique identifier. And setting that beforehand allows you to reference that within the project, if that makes sense. So objects, weapons, boulder. There's my boulder. And I could be wrong on that. That's just my observation from using the engine. So we have our boulder that extends a projectile. I'm going to add a CPP file as well. Which is just schematic entry registration, essentially. All right. And that's our boulder. So our projectile is done. We have a projectile factory, which will create a boulder if it gets set up. And then one thing we want to do is, this is the base projectile class. So the launch velocity is 25. Let's jump into the fire method here. So it takes the weight times the mass to calculate gravity. We use this ballistics vector utility class to calculate the angle at which we should fire. Yeah, we'll see you, Denalty. Thanks for stopping by. So what we want to do here, and I think this is actually outdated because the launch velocity, I don't think is... I could be wrong, but I don't think that matters because we calculate our launch velocity at time of... Maybe we don't. I could stand corrected. We calculate the angle, so... I wonder if it will even be able to hit though. So, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to... So we're going to add some projectile properties. So the launch velocity we're going to set to 100. We're going to set the so the mass should be set. We get the weight here. So it is weight. It's an equipment property. So our boulder, so equipment properties dot 8 is equal to 40 kilograms, let's say. So we'll have to play around with this a bit in the engine, but with that set up, the launch velocity is 100 meters per second. The weight is 40 kilograms. That may have to go up. I know Denalty mentioned maybe it should be 90. But we'll first try this and see how it goes. So yeah, that and that is pretty much the setup. So we have our animation events from CryEngine. We have our custom load, custom fire. That then kicks off to the boulder, which fires from the joint, the TR bone 09, at 0.3 seconds into playing our fire animation. We're not going to get to actually firing that projectile tonight. We do have everything set up. The only thing we do not have finalized at this point is the Trebuchet. And to get that fully working, we're going to have to... I believe, set up a new character for the Trebuchet. Potentially. But maybe not. I mean, we'll see. I'll take a look into that this week and see for our next stream. If we need that, and if we do, we'll get that finalized and get the projectiles actually firing. But that's gonna be it for tonight. It would have been nice if we had gotten a little bit further, but that's kind of how these things go. So if you guys are interested in taking a look at kind of what the next plans are for Last Kingdom, or interested in just hopping in Discord, chatting with some of the other guys here, please hop over to our Discord. I posted a link in the chat. There will also be a link down below for the YouTube video. And if there's anything you guys would like to work on specifically within CryEngine, within game dev, we're doing everything right now for Last Kingdom as a project, so there's definitely a chance that we can work on some of that, specifically if there's something you'd like to work through. So let us know. Hop over to Discord, chat with us. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, where we will likely actually finally get to firing that projectile with the Trebuchet as a new unit. I'd like to just take these final moments here at the end to again thank Moose King and Anara for their Patreon support. If you guys feel like that's something you'd like to jump in and help out with, there are tiered benefits to supporting our development, and it would mean a lot to us as well. So thank you guys for coming. We'll see you again next time.